So we've got Karen Nicholson with us today, and she's going to be answering questions on the newspaper for us today. What are you interested in journalism?
I blame my mother entirely. My mother was a Fleet Street journalist, and as young children we were often called upon to be child models in magazines and things like that. We had to do fashion shows and stuff like that as models, and I just guess journalism and the world of magazines was always in the blood.
So, was this at school?
Yeah, it was before we went to school. I've somewhere got ghastly pictures of me in posing as a model in knitted hats for my mother's magazine when I was about 4. But school didn't encourage me in what I wanted to do. I think it came from my mother.
What was your first position in the job?
My first job in journalism was as a trainee reporter, and I left school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Got a job in a building society and saw an advert for a trainee reporter. Very wisely, and it was the best thing I ever did, I applied for the job.
What was the most interesting part of the job?
I think the fact that it's just not a 9-to-5 job. It catapulted me out of an ordinary world into an extraordinary world where you went into work in the morning and you just never knew what was coming. Very exciting.
So who was the most famous person you've ever met or interviewed?
Well, I can think of 2 people really. I was sent off to interview Linda McCartney, Paul McCartney's wife, because they lived locally. I remember thinking, God, I'd rather run a mile than do this. But I did catch up with her in a lane outside their country home, and I did ask her for an interview. I remember her looking down at me quite nicely from her horse. She was a very tall woman, and saying, "No, thank you." But at least my editor knew that I'd tried. The other person I interviewed and actually got an interview with was a judge called Sir Justice Melford Stevenson, who defended Ruth Ellis, the last woman to hang. He was very interesting.
How long have you worked for in print?
I hate to admit it, but I've been in newspapers for 30 years.
What do you do? What is your main job?
Well, my main job has been, I've done everything in print newspapers, from being a trainee reporter to being a court reporter. I also dabbled in feature writing, although I'm more at home in hard news. I covered the courts for many years and worked my way up to be an assistant editor of a newspaper.
How did you get into print?
I got into print by basically getting a job in newspapers. That's the wonderful thing about being a journalist. You get your stories published. Other people spend years trying to get stuff in papers. We do it in our very first week.
What sort of hours do you work when you...
Well, it's every hour under the sun, it seems. I was interviewing some trainee journalists yesterday, and I said to them, and this is very, very true, you don't have a life when you're a journalist. Journalism is your life.
What kind of qualifications would you need?
The qualifications are different now than when I started. On paper, you need 2 A-levels. A degree's not bad, but more than anything, you need enthusiasm. I would, as an employer, employ anyone who was enthusiastic and was burning with ambition. That's what you need more than anything.
What papers did you work for?
Oh gosh, too many to count, but I started on the Sussex Express and County Herald, which was a weekly broadsheet in the south. But I've worked all over. I've worked up in the northwest and the northeast, and then I came back down south, and I was working latterly on the county press on the Isle of Wight.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, lovely.